Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my 2025 coverage of the National Book Festival. The National Book Festival has been happening for 25 years in Washington, D.C., put on by the Library of Congress. And I've been attending for several years, and also, at least since I've been on BookTube for most of this time, making, little B-roll snippets where I can take you along with me to some of the things I did. But as a teaser, I'll just go ahead and show you my new swag. Here is the pamphlet brochure schedule, I guess I should say. We have the 25-year mark and all of these nice books. My niece actually noticed that most of the years of the book festival, because we got to look at all the posters this year for the 25th anniversary, most of them feature a red book of some sort. And anyway, inside we have, the map of the convention center, and we have all of the panels on display. Green was also apparently a big color this year, going by the tote bag and also, the thumbnail you might have seen. I have too many probably of these tote bags now that have this logo on them against various colors, but I do have to say I like the color this year. So it feels like maybe my book festivaling might be in a little bit of flux. For several years, my dad would come and join me, and then we'd split into two different directions to, view our own panels, and I'd do a book signing, at least one of them. But now, for the second year, my niece has joined us as well, so things are changing a bit, and I think this festival in particular has been one of my more on-the-fly type of festivals, which is kind of shocking that it worked out as well as it did. But you can also probably see through the upcoming footage, because I more or less put all of the clips in a chronological order. I got there early in the morning where there were fewer people, and I was able to kind of move around a bit on my own, and then my father and niece came up from Baltimore in the afternoon, and I hung out with them for a bit, and then I left them to go do a book signing. And then when I was in line for the book signing, I realized I might have enough time to do a final panel, and so I was reading my own book in line, a post-apocalyptic book, funnily enough, and then I saw, as I was scanning the schedule, I remembered that an author I know was giving a talk about her dystopian book, and I thought maybe those conversations were close enough, as it were, and that actually she and the other author talked a little bit about hope, and I put those snippets in at the end of the video, so it's always kind of nice to have a little hope in the video. But that being said, this montage I have coming up is just like, a day in the life for me. But I'm going to leave a link to the Library of Congress YouTube page down below in case you'd like to see the full panels and all of the context for them of what the authors are trying to say. The festival is pretty big, and we have lots of famous authors in various genres for kids and teens and adults. And I guess that's about all I have to say up here. Expect me back on this channel in the near future with my monthly Authors Answer video. And in the meantime, action.
to you both about this. There have been so many rapturous starred reviews and all of that, but I just wanted to start by celebrating the fact that they're both longlisted for the Booker Prize. asking you both to describe, for anybody in the audience who might not know what your books are about, just give a quick description and also tell us the origin story, because I know the origin stories, like I've heard, and they're so fascinating. So Susan, do you want to start maybe?
Sure. Can people hear me okay? We self-clipped our mics, so that's an extra skill we learned today. Flashlight is the story of a small family, a mother, a father, and a daughter, who go on a family trip to Japan in the late 1970s, where a catastrophe befalls them that changes their lives forever. And only 2 of the 3 members of that family return to the United States, where they got started. And the origins of this book are various, but the truest origin story is also going to give the biggest misimpression, which is that I traveled to Japan with my own family when I was a young girl in the late 1970s. This catastrophe did not befall us. And so in that sense, the book is not remotely autobiographical, but Japan made a big impression on me at that age, and I always wanted to write about it.
Very cool. Kate.
Yeah, Audition opens with a woman who's very much in the middle of her life. She's happily married, she's a successful actor, and a young man, a stranger, comes to her and says, I think I'm your son. And from there, kind of 2 narratives unspool. And the origins of the story I know them quite precisely. I saw a headline in the New York Times that read, a stranger told me he was my son. And I didn't click on the article because I already knew, just from reading the headline, that I wanted to write a novel from that premise. For a long time, I couldn't quite figure out my way into it. I was thinking of a lot of kind of plot-oriented explanations for that sentence. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, a wonderful poet, and I said, this sentence is so fascinating to me. And she said, that's just a description of parenthood. Every time my college son comes home, it's like a stranger has walked in. And that was when I thought, I want to write a novel that is about certain very universal experiences of parenthood, of making art, of being in a marriage, that nonetheless has something inside of them that feel kind of mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
right now, I am leaving the world for my, great grandchildren or whatever. And so what choices am I making right now? The world the choices that I make right now, they're gonna have to live with in the future. And it also made me realize like this fear that we have, I'm like, oh my gosh, big tech, there's so much data about us and they're gonna hold it forever. And it's an archive. And like every other archive, throughout history, it will be liable to the same sort of, faults. Like no archive is complete. No archive is beyond damage or gaps or, loss or hacking. So it's not, things are not complete. Like it's the choices that we make today and how we, particularly in how we regulate these technologies, that are going to decide the future. We're not just passive, witnesses to this future. We are active participants in it, and it's the choices that we make, the advocacy that we engage in, the actions that we take, particularly as a community, not so much as individuals, that really is going to make a difference.
That really ties into what you're saying. So if I started the book with these different anxieties, part of it was to do research about them, learn more about them, write about them, try to understand them better. And part of my research process did involve interviewing some experts. And I interviewed a sociologist who studies climate change. I interviewed a woman who developed a fabric made of algae that is very sustainable. I interviewed someone who studies global supply chains. And I would always begin the interview by asking, what are you worried about? And depending on their specific field, they would have an answer to that. And then I would end the interview by asking, what gives you hope? And to that question, they all had the same answer, which was very moving to me, which was collective action. That was it. I mean, it's what you were saying, and I saw that in your book. And at the end of Hum, there is May, who has been struggling for connection to her family and to her environment and to herself, is able to find a kind of connectivity and collectivity that hopefully brings at least another hope at the end. Not every reader sees it, but I do.
And about it yourself, or do you feel hopeful?
The book helped me.
The book helped, okay.